So here's the deal. These last few episodes, I think I got a little too, maybe pushed the envelope a little bit. I got a little bit crazy. Please forgive me. I'm only human. But it does beg the question. If you have a soul, a pulse, or any moral fiber, you have to wonder at times, where are we headed? Where are the political chess masters taking us as a society? And how can the average man or woman take in political information on the left, right, and not want to completely check out across the board? I shake my head at Mitch McConnell as much as I scratch my head looking at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Haute Couture on the pages of GQ. As our friend Tony Soprano once pontificated, whatever happened to the strong, silent types?
Anxiety attacks are legitimate psychiatric emergencies. Suppose you were driving and you passed out.
Let me tell you something. Nowadays, everybody's got to go to shrinks and counselors and go on Sally Jesse Raphael and talk about their problems. Whatever happened to Gary Cooper, the strong, silent type? That was an American. He wasn't in touch with his feelings. He just did what he had to do. See, what they didn't know is once they got Gary Cooper in touch with his feelings, that they wouldn't be able to shut him up. And then it's dysfunction this, and dysfunction that, and dysfunction my fungal. Each week for me, the news, the intelligence, the overwhelming level of stupidity inside politics seems to reach new heights. New level of absurdity. Whereas a country, nothing surprises anyone more about anything. That has to be scaring you as much as it's scaring me, right? Each week, in order to bring you a new podcast and perspective, my process is to ingest as much of this bullshit as humanly possible, so that I can personally distill it down and try and make some sense of it. Now, as I write this and speak it, for some reason, Rachel Maddow comes to mind, Chris Cuomo, or even that preppy fuck, Tucker Carlson, where every night on cable television, they were or are offered the opportunity to speak their minds. And some also go against some. And herein lies the problem. They work for the largest news organization on the planet, backed by billions and streamed and broadcast into living rooms and offices across our So what they say matters. It moves opinions. It influences dialogue. And if we are being honest, it feeds the crazies on the left. Right. CNN and Fox, they need to stop calling themselves a fucking news network. They need to call themselves an entertainment destination. I hope our country at this point understands that fundamental point and further, at some point, hopefully soon, some genius in technology will create a different version of news based and true, not opinions. But without further ado, it really is bucket. Let's get started.
Maggie Haberman has a new book coming out. It's called Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America. This might be weighing on the brain of Donald Trump because he's got other things he's worrying about, but he says, here we go again. Another fake book is out. This one, supposedly very boring and stale, by self-appointed hit case of failing unfunded liability, New York Times writer Maggie Haberman. Hagerman, he says, the T. In it, she tells many made-up stories with zero fact-checking or confirmation by anyone who would know, like me. Listen to that again. She tells many made-up stories with zero fact-checking or confirmation by anyone who would know, like me. Remember that. In one case, she lies about me wanting to find my daughter Ivanka and Jared. Wrong. Pure fiction. Never even crossed my mind. Just had to find it. Also, one second, because some people wanted to mistakenly spell the Haberman and put the G rather than Haberman. If he was, he would have quoted it or he would have capitalized it. He wants to make sure you guys know when he's saying something so clever.
Maggie Haberman has covered him for 6 years, now almost 7 years, and is arguably the top reporter covering him at the New York Times. We constantly talk, Sat down for an interview with her 3 times. She wrote a book about him. He still doesn't know her name. He says Hagerman instead of Haberman. I mean, look, if it was a slip up once, you've seen us say it 1,000 times, even for the right wing. Oh, it's a slip up, it's no big deal. For people we don't agree with, it's a slip up, it's no big deal, right? But this one, how do you not know her name? You talked to her all those times. He just clinical. He doesn't care about anything that isn't Donald J. Trump. So he doesn't even pay attention. He's got the mind of like a little flea.
Within Trump land, we can honestly say that there have been more books on this guy than all of the books written on World War I and II combined. But something that caught my attention this week is the release of a book written by New York Times journalist Maggie Haberman, appropriately called Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump and the Breaking of America. In anticipation of this release, Haberman wrote an article for that fancy publication, The Atlantic, which for some reason, when I have a copy of that magazine, I just feel smarter. This is an article that I want to use inside this episode because Maggie has a special place in Trump's heart. Although she works for the New York Times, which Trump hates, for a time, Maggie was a journalist at the New York Daily News and New York Post, both papers that Trump utilized throughout his career and myth building.
Welcome to the show. I feel like I know you. I feel like I know you far better than I know you because I read you all the time. You have known Donald Trump for years. You have covered him back in his real estate days. So I want to ask about last night. He talks a lot about unity and then at the same time says very divisive things. Do you think he's aware of the contradictions that exist when he speaks?
No.
Okay.
I don't. And I can go into depth about that if you'd like. Look, I mean, A, I don't think he knows, and B, I don't think he cares. I mean, one of the things that he did during the campaign, his particular talent was seeming to take both sides of an issue, sometimes in the same sentence.
Because you've covered him for so long, it does seem like he likes you, and at times, and then at other times does not like you, but you certainly have a relationship with him that provides you a decent amount of access, and is it true that he has reached out to sort of criticize your work at times and gone so far as to sort of rate it?
There was one incident in particular, and he was giving me a very hard time about a number of stories. He was saying something to the effect of, "You never write fairly about me," and I reminded him of a story I had done about Mar-a-Lago that he had thanked me for, which, to be clear, was not the goal of the story. And then he said, "Oh, that's right." I think that was about an 8 or something like that, and it was not. That's not normally what you hear in response. But no, I mean, look, I've gotten the angry reaction. I've gotten the Sharpie notes that an aide will take a picture of and send you, and then I've gotten phone calls thanking me for a certain story, and from each moment to the next, it's like the other one didn't happen.
The title of the book says a lot, The Breaking of America. Can you imagine that the masses, or let's say at least 50% of this great country, has allowed Donnie Trump to possibly pull the best modern day version of Kaiser Sose I've ever seen.
Nobody ever knew him or saw anybody that ever worked directly for him. But to hear Kobayashi tell it, anybody could work for Sensei. That was his power. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Maggie opens the Atlantic article with a great passage. She quotes Trump. "Can you believe these are my customers?" Donald Trump once asked while surveying the crowd in the Taj Mahal casino's poker room. "Look at those losers," he said to his consultant Tom O'Neill, "of people spending money on the floor of the Trump Plaza Casino." Visiting the Iowa State Fair as a presidential candidate in 2015, he was astounded that locals fell in line to support him because of a few free rides in his branded helicopter. In the White House, he was sometimes stunned at his own backers' fervor, telling aides, "They're fucking crazy." Yet, they loved him and wanted to own a piece of him. And that was what mattered most. Now with this passage, do people forget that Donnie Trump grew up in Queens in New York City in the 80s? I'm sure if you asked most people in the middle of the country what they think of New Yorkers, they most likely would call you a fucking asshole. Rude, entitled, pompous, gruff. The list continues. Yeah? With the Teflon Don. All these qualities to Billy Bob and Judy in Kansas have somehow evaporated. It's truly fascinating.
Part of the Trump phenomenon is the more he's called a bigot or a fascist on account of his reactionary comments, the more support for him hardens. But perhaps it's kind of pointless what you choose to call him unless you address the underlying reasons as to why people support him in the first place.
He expresses their anger, their frustration, their fear that the kind of life that they wish they could live is threatened. He's basically saying, I'm going to say what I want to say, and if you don't like it, too bad. I don't care, and neither do my supporters.
Local councillor Mark Scott is no Trump supporter himself, but understands what people like about him.
They're not saying, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. I just like what Donald Trump has to say.
Donald Trump doesn't feel like an outsider, more an enfant terrible born of what some would say is a generation of conservative politics not afraid to stoke the fear of government and play on America's weakness in the world.
He is an exaggerated version of the most antagonistic and fear-mongering strategies of conservatives in the United States over the last 30 or 40 years.
In another interesting passage, Haberman hammers home a point in a much more eloquent way. Here it is. The New York from which Trump emerged was its own morass of corruption and dysfunction, stretching from seats of executive power to portions of the media to the real estate industry in which his family found its wealth. The world of New York developers was filled with shady figures